Welcome to another video. Wow, this has been one of the toughest gameplay challenges in my Final Fantasy history. But the more I'm proud to present you one, if not the coolest way to farm gil all by yourself. Yes, no group needed, no crafting needed, no gathering, no currency exchange. Just raw 1v1 combat.
A test of your reflexes!
The only thing you need to bring with is a level 90 warrior or dark knight with decent gear. I myself did it with item level 610 and without the additional echo buff. But it was actually very close on 2 bosses. Furthermore, warrior is my absolute recommendation if you want to challenge all 3 bosses, but I guess if you're going for the easiest among them, paladin and gunbreaker should be able to do it as well, maybe even for the second strongest. And if you just want to beat them solo for the self-accomplishment, you can rely on the echo buff that will appear once you've fought for 3 minutes and lost, stacking up quite heavily. But back to the subject of gil making. What are we talking about? Basically, as you could learn from some of my showcase videos or my top 10 weapons for this or that job, there are a couple of crafted weapons you can buy and sell on the market board. And this actually is a very well saturated market, with high demand and kinda low supply, depending on the server and boss you're tackling. However, some of these are very interesting in particular, like the Shinryu ephemeral weapons or the Suzaku flame ones or the Byakuya stuff, that is kinda old but gold and has a very unique design to it, I must say. And of course, these weapons cannot be crafted out of pure desire to have them being part of your collection, right? Exactly, they require materials, and among some appropriate stuff found in the fitting expansion tier, you will also always need a rare drop from the respective boss the design is taken from. Which leads us to the Byakuya's mane, the Shinryu scale and the scarlet Tailfeather. The first dropping from Byakuya Extreme, the second from Shinryu Extreme and the third from Suzaku Extreme. Sounds logical, right? And to be honest with you, the drop chance might be kinda horrible, but still better than the mounts, I guess. If I remember correctly, when I did these trials back in Stormblood to farm the doggo mounts, these rare materials have dropped many times more than the mounts did. However, back then these didn't have much value because all 3 weapons you can craft them into had been released in Shadowbringers, so at that point these became much more relevant and popular. Nonetheless, if you have the luck to get them dropped or find yourself in a crazily good power trip to beat some of these bosses in clean 10-minute runs over and over again, I honestly believe this could be a darn great gil making method. At least much more than just crafting or gathering stuff, right? And yeah, before you greedy billionaires in the comments section scream at me, this video might destroy the market for this category, but let me tell you, this is not like, hey, do it, it's that easy. You really have to earn it, literally. Which leads us to the bosses and how you can beat them. Oh, and before starting, those also drop very cool mounts if you haven't farmed them or bought them from Moogle tomestones at some point in time, so check out which of them could be interesting to you. But without further ado, let us get started, and as you can see prices for yourself, I will leave timestamps down below so you can check which boss might be of interest to you, according to the prices of materials on your server. Starting with Byakuya Extreme, which is actually a piece of cake if you go in with a decently equipped warrior. Basically ignore everything except the State of Shock mechanic. This mechanic applies a debuff that will increase your incoming physical damage significantly. However, there's one trick to avoid that debuff, namely by absorbing the damage of the mechanic entirely. And you can do that by using Shake It Off at the right time when the boss's cast bar appears. After that, don't worry about the second grip, as the auto hit damage is easily healable with your Bloodwetting. Whenever the dog appears, ignore him, as no mechanic will deal enough damage to be dangerous to you, except the State of Shock one. Just absorb the first hit so that the second one won't kill you. I haven't tested this on Paladin or Gunbreaker, but I remember that I tried it with my Paladin and made it to the Enrage, so there should be a way to do it now with recent 6.2 gear maybe. Dark Knight on the other hand is doable, but super tricky as you need pixel perfect timing with your The Blackest Night, which means you must use your TBN right at the last time frame before you lose control over your character. I highly recommend to practice this on the first mechanic so that you can safely use it accordingly. Then do it on the second one again, and as you're normally dealing with 3 times of the State of Shock, just use your Living Dead for the final hit, which is a safe avoidance of death by finally being able to heal up yourself afterwards. Alright, coming to Shinryu, this one took me a good amount of time and a couple of nerfs, but I managed to kill it with my Dark Knight and came very close to the finish with my warrior. However, there's a video of Mr. Happy doing it with some percentages of the echo buff that is quite close to my stats that I have with 6.2 gear now. The reason why I lost and gave up at some point is the nasty Dragon's debuff, which will apply a damage down to your character in significant numbers. Doing this as a Dark Knight is still not easy to pull off, as you need insanely powerful burst at the finish enrage, plus basically doing the boss's entire mechanics, at least mostly. So of course, don't let yourself be kicked off the stage by the tidal wave right at the start. Make sure to kill the worms hard while using some cleaving potential to maximize damage. On the other hand, the damage check isn't that tight until you reach the final phase, so don't worry about that too much. Afterwards, always keep your fighting orientation slightly backwards, as dangerous icicles might push you from the platform. And of course, the most crucial mechanic, the tail impact, which means the tail will land where you stand with that green arrow on your head. So as long as this arrow is shown, this is the snapshotting phase. Choose one of these platforms that are not damaged already, and as it will always hit 2 platforms, just make sure to keep the damage as low as possible. Never hit the green one a second time or one time when it's already damaged, because that is a wipe and you need to restart the fight. I mean, just try this out sometime and you will figure it out, it's part of the fun really. However, what's not funny are these annoying dragons that will apply a damage down debuff to your character once they disappear, which happens right after they spawn for 3 of them, but one will stay longer with a tether to you. The first 3 should be avoided by using TBN or Shake It Off as warrior, while the last can be soaked with TBN again on Dark Knight or by using Blood Wedding at the right time. If you receive a damage down in the first phase, it is not a problem, but later it will be, so make sure to time it correctly. And when is the right time? Basically when the tether disappears or the dragon head moves. Click on your shield ASAP, where the tighter time window is on Blood Wedding of course. After you survived that and haven't been kicked off by icicles, be prepared for Aerial Blast, which is a multi-hitting knockback mechanic with small knockback waves followed by a big one at the last quench of the cast bar. Use your anti-knockback here, and if possible let one platform stand as backup to avoid the risk of falling off. Afterwards, Shinryu will despawn and go to either of the corners of the platform. Here, make sure that you go to the most sideward position of his flying course, which is much easier to achieve when you have more of these corner platforms available. When you got knocked off once, you will know what I mean. Then when Shinryu comes back, after some minor hits, he will signal the next phase with a short active time event. That means, let yourself be dropped off and be kicked onto the second platform by standing right next to the cliff where you can see the platform. Let yourself be kicked there and kill ads like always. Alright, the final stage. After Shinryu's Proto-Star, don't jump into the blue circle but very close next to it, so that the knockback will push you towards any of the corners which you want to have at a straight line to your back. Then sprint along the tail to enter the platform where Shinryu resides, and fight the last battle with your good old friend. Now things get interesting. Try to mitigate as much as you can, especially the Terra slashes, but make sure to have your shields ready for the dragon heads, as this is the crucial factor to your victory. Once these heads spawn, wait for them to move and then use TBN or Shake It Off. Then wait for the last head to move and the tether to disappear and do the same thing again. Just use Blood Wedding on the warrior due to the long CD on Shake It Off. Meanwhile, you will face some Hypernova and Ice Storm mechanics. In this combination, stay still until you'll be frozen over to be released by the Hypernova, and with the 11 bolt version, just keep moving to not become a snowy Iceman. After all that is done, and yes, the dragons can possibly appear a second time, when you find yourself between 30 and 25% of his HP, make sure to save your cooldowns now, because whenever he starts casting Tidal Wave, you have to jump onto his back immediately to kill both wings first and then the dragon itself, before any of these casts have finished. Some cleaving potential is definitely recommended and your Living Shadow works wonders here, but if you struggle to do it, I'd recommend a potion. Yes, this feels much more like the battle certain reflex testers had in their mind, huh? So give it a try and grant him all the glory and honor you have, and if you're lucky like I was, you get the scale on your first victory. Okay, if there's still life left to live and fights left to fight, let us take down Suzaku, shall we? But beware, this is going to be brutal, but you have my deepest gratitude if you can beat her easily. The good thing though, if you bring with some savage gear or upgraded Luna Envoy stuff, this might actually be a solid way to farm gil and beating out the competition that doesn't have the grits and bites to do it. But you have to be a warrior, I guess. Let me know if you did it with other jobs though. I know of a sage doing it and a warrior, but both needed echo, which makes this very inefficient for the gil farming aspect. However, the start is to basically going ham until to the Phoenix down phase. Here make sure to kill a small feather and lay down an AoE in the center to revive some little phoenixes. But whatever you do, keep DPSing Suzaku, then drag them into the free space and just soak their ashes to ashes finisher by using Holmgang. Heal up afterwards and dance into the next phase. Now things get insanely demanding and all your focus is required. The reason for this is you won't have any space of HP or self-heal left to allow Vuln stacks or the like, so you need to do all mechanics properly. So, as you're having the big buff from dancing now, go ham with your inner release and potions, and also recover health with blood wedding very early on because you need it for the Phantom Flurry later. Basically for every Phantom Flurry, so keep that in mind. This of course also includes not getting pulled into the center or pushed back too much by her melody and refrain mechanics, the first pulling you in, the latter pushing you back. Okay, to the Phantom Flurry mechanic. This applies a heavy debuff to your character with which you receive insanely heavy physical damage, so be prepared and use your cooldowns wisely. So soak whatever happens before without using more than a single mitigation. And then when she casts Phantom Flurry, go behind her already and prepare for the follow-up damage. That is the big deal. Not the attack itself, but the auto hits after. It is actually really hard to describe, so give it a go sometimes to learn a proper timing and combination of your blood wedding and equilibrium, which are mandatory to survive this without going overboard, as mechanic happens many times and you need your mitigation to survive it. And like I said, the first actually doesn't hit that hard. Afterwards, the exploding platforms mechanic starts and you just have to focus on that entirely for the first walkthrough. However, at close quarter crescendo, which will let your character autopilot into the direction the arrows are indicating, you definitely want to use inner release in this phase. Don't worry, it will give you all the Falcleys available, but it is necessary for the tight DPS checks and actually grants you a big advantage for the melody and refrain pushes and pulls. Because inner release protects you very nicely against this mechanic, granting some very good timing loop when you use it at the crescendo phase. Alright, after crescendo there's a lot of stuff thrown at you, especially another Phantom Flurry that you want to survive with home gang this time. This might actually be the checkpoint, so don't worry if that doesn't work for some tries. As we really want to use home efficiently here, let her punch you down to 60 or 50k life even, and then use home when her auto attack sequence begins, so that it makes use of the effect, soaking up 1, 2 or even 3 hits. Then you can recover immediately with equilibrium and blood wedding. Thrill of battle actually wasn't needed here, but I got slightly afraid of dying. Yes, right after this comes the tower mechanic, while mitigating damage and recovering from the hefty pummeling before. But as long as you have blood wedding ready, you should be fine here. After that is done, go through some more platform phases, but note that these will be combined with other mechanics that can easily distract you. So stay focused, especially on the platform plus Phantom Flurry, where it is advisable to use one more mitigation than you used before, just to be sure and safe, while being able to focus on the platforms in the meantime. The good thing now, your home will be ready for the next flurry again, where all CDs will be ready for the last, so you can make use of swapping between these mitigations while using the short ones like blood wedding and equilibrium basically every time she steps on you. So throw in the last well-timed cooldown phase, advisably with a potion that I needed due to the tight DPS check, and get rid of her last quench of HP. And just as a side note, I managed to reach this last stage many times and failed to a 0.2, 0.4 and even a 0.1 remaining HP pool. But the inner release on the crescendo mechanic instead of waiting brought me to victory. But I guess it is still very tight and gear dependent how difficult this fight is for you. Alright, maybe I will upload the whole fight in the next couple of days, but you should do well as long as your gear is decent and you stick to the tips I mentioned. It's just not for everyone and gets very stressful, but in all honesty that is the whole reason why I love making Gillen this way. Actually fighting for your money and still having a decent challenge at hand and not just brain dead farming, right? I had a lot of fun and I can only recommend to give it a try for yourself. So stick around for more solo challenges on the upcoming mount farming video that is already in the making, and until then, stay safe, stay challenged and keep loving Final Fantasy.